Welcome back to Ozar Digital. In this video, we're going to show you how to set up a proper local development environment for CodeIgniter 4 applications using MAMP. A proper environment means essentially setting up a virtual host for a given web app that has a dedicated public directory. Now, why do we even need a virtual host? In PHP frameworks like CodeIgniter 4 and Laravel, you typically place your app files in a directory structure where the public folder contains all the web-accessible files. The most common mistake people make is to point their web server's document root setting directly to the project's root folder. Then their web app can only be accessed by a URL like http://localhost/webappname/public. This can lead to routing issues and confusion. The best practice, or any practice that is not a bad practice here, is to create a separate virtual host that directly points to the public folder. So now let's get started with our MAMP setup. MAMP is an acronym for Mac, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. It is a local development server environment that can be installed easily with just a few clicks. It provides web servers based on Apache and Nginx, MySQL, and PHP. So you can easily test your projects on a desktop system without messing around with complex manual configurations. To get started, head over to the official MAMP website at MAMP.info and download the MAMP package for Mac. We'll be using the free version of MAMP in this tutorial, and we'll configure Apache to set up a virtual host to deploy our CodeIgniter 4 web app. If you'd rather see a demo of setting up Nginx that comes with this free version, request it by commenting below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. On the homepage, you'll see both MAMP and MAMP Pro options. While MAMP Pro offers additional features, the free version of MAMP is perfectly suitable for our needs today. Click on Download to get the installer. One thing which might confuse you is that both the free and the Pro version comes with the same download. After downloading the installer, open it and follow the on-screen instructions to install MAMP. Once installed, you'll find both a MAMP and a MAMP Pro icon in your applications directory, which is typical. Since we are interested in the free version, ignore MAMP Pro for now. Let's fire up the free version inside the folder named just MAMP. I'll first go to the preferences and standardize a couple of settings by setting the web server's port to 80 and the MySQL port to 3306, which are typical defaults for an AMP stack. By default, MAMP sets up a default host pointing to a local htdocs folder, which we won't be using. Rather, we'll create a virtual host for a CodeIgniter 4 app, so we can adhere to best practices when pointing to the special public folder. Whenever the configuration is modified, MAMP starts or restarts automatically for those changes to take effect right away. And it opens a sample page it is hosting locally in the default web browser. To see the current URL better in full, I'll open the web browser settings and make a couple of tweaks under the Advanced tab. Better to have the full website address shown, default encoding as UTF-8, and show features for web developers. Before we proceed, I'd like to mention that in this tutorial, we'll be using a CodeIgniter 4 app created with CodeIgniter Wizard. For those who aren't familiar, CodeIgniter Wizard is a powerful application generator that creates complete, ready-to-use CodeIgniter applications with CRUD operations and more, all with minimal effort. In short, it's a tool that helps generate CodeIgniter-based apps with minimal setup. It's great for creating scaffolds, controllers, models, and more in a snap. Although we'll use a CodeIgniter web app that's generated with CI Wizard, the instructions in this demo work with any CodeIgniter 4 app, manually developed or otherwise. I won't go over the steps for creating the web app from scratch, but for those interested, we have end-to-end demos of CodeIgniter Wizard in other videos on our channel. Also, an all-new video is in the works to showcase the latest CodeIgniter Wizard features that came out this year, so you may want to check out those videos on our channel. If you can think of a type of video we haven't come up with, let us know in the comments. Now let's see how a virtual host can be manually created for our CodeIgniter 4 application. This will allow us to access our application using a custom domain like crmdemo.test instead of localhost/crmdemo/public or localhost/public. First, we need to find the Apache configuration files in the MAMP installation directory. I'll navigate to /applications/mamp conf apache to locate the file named httpd.conf. I'll first make a backup copy of this file, and then open it with a code editor called Zed. Zed is a promising newcomer to the IDE arena, and who knows, it could replace Visual Studio Code in the near future. Anyway, for this kind of tasks, you can use any editor of your own choice. Once opened, I'll scroll down to line 667 or whichever line has an entry for the file, httpd vhosts, the full path of httpd vhosts.conf right under virtual hosts. It will be commented out by default, and I'll uncomment it simply by removing the hash sign at the beginning. I'll then save the file and locate httpd vhosts.conf under a subfolder called extra. I'll then make a backup of this file as well, before I edit it. This one comes with two example entries. A virtual host entry is written in XML, and it defines the virtual host configuration for a website or web app, specifying where the web pages will be served from. I'll comment out the first one. And we'll edit the second one by adapting its configuration to our sample app called CRMDemo. I want the base URL of my web app to be http://crmdemo.test, so I will copy the part crmdemo.test and I'll paste it in the server name directive. Next, I'll open my CodeIgniter project in the code editor. And verify that the .env file has the end URL defined in app.base URL, which should be http://crmdemo.test. Then I'll open a terminal right from the IDE and then type in the command pwd to get the fully qualified path of my web application in the file system. I'll copy this to the virtual host's configuration file, replacing the example entry for the document root directive by pasting the path of our own web app. Next up are the directives for the location of logs. We'd better specify a pertinent path for the log files. So first, I will find where MAMP stores its logs by default, in the Finder. Now I'll open the logs folder in Terminal to run a pwd command to get its fully qualified path, copy it, and then paste it in the corresponding entry in the vhosts. Finally, I'll add a few more lines specifying the configuration options of the directory of our web app, which is typical for a CodeIgniter web app. The directive allow override specifies which directives in .htaccess files placed within the specified directory can override the current settings. Setting it to all means all directives in the .htaccess files will be allowed. So, to recap, a virtual host entry defines the virtual host configuration for a website or web app, specifying properties like where the web pages will be served from. In this case, the asterisk indicates that the config applies to any IP address on port 80, which is the default port for HTTP traffic. The server name directive defines the primary domain name for the virtual host. And the document root directive specifies the directory from which Apache will serve the website's files. It specifies the folder where the site's files are located, which is used as the root for all requests. All the URL paths in this virtual host are resolved relative to this directory. Inside the configuration, there is the directory directive for the folder that allows the use of .htaccess files to override settings and permits any client to access the files. At this point, we need to tell our computer that requests to crmdemo.test should be directed to our local server. For this, we need to edit the host file located at /etc/hosts. The etc directory is hidden by default, which is why you never see it in the Finder. I'll simply open and edit it in Terminal using the VI editor, but unless you already are into VI, you can use an editor like Nano, which is somewhat easier to work with. If you are stuck at editing the hosts file, write it in the comments below, and we or somebody else will walk you through it. I will add a line with the IP of the local host, which is 127.00.1. Followed by the virtual host name, which is crmdemo.test. Finally, I've saved it by typing W and Q and then hitting return. If you're using Nano, you can save and exit by hitting Ctrl with O, then Enter and then Ctrl X. Now I'll stop and start MAMP one more time for the configuration change to take effect. And I'll launch my web app at the new URL now pointing to the virtual host. The app loads nicely with all the CSS apparently coming through. The authentication menu is also working all right. Let me check out what the leads section looks like now. Oops, something is not right. It looks like the Apache server that comes with the free version of MAMP does not have URL rewriting module enabled by default. But no worries, it's easy to fix that. I go back to the httpd.conf and we'll look up the entry regarding their write module. I'll enter the same thing in the replace field just to be safe, so that I do not delete what I'm looking for by accident. Okay, I found it online 179, which was commented all right. I uncomment it and save. Now, restarting MAMP one last time should do the trick. Now I refresh the page where we left off, and there it is. Our app is up and running now. Let's see if we can log in. Wait, I forgot the email to sign in with. So I'll cheat by copying it from CIWiz, and there we are. The password is the default password created by CIWiz. Perfect. Our CodeIgniter 4 application is now running correctly through our virtual host. Notice that the URL is clean. There's no need for /public in the URL because our virtual host is already pointing directly to the public folder. Conclusion. To recap what we've learned, we installed MAMP, a free local server environment. We configured a virtual host to properly serve our CodeIgniter 4 application. We pointed the virtual host directly to the public folder, which is the best practice. This setup ensures that your development environment closely mirrors how your application will run in production. It works for CodeIgniter 4, Laravel, or any modern PHP framework that uses a public folder architecture. Remember, we'll be releasing a new video soon demonstrating the latest features of CodeIgniter Wizard 3.x, which makes building CodeIgniter applications even faster and easier. If you found this tutorial helpful, please like and subscribe. Drop any questions in the comments below, and happy coding!